So good evening, everyone. I'm Mahendra Shah speaking from Brazil,
No.
or both Yuri and I have both been in Bali and Brazil. Let me begin by making a profound statement. There can be no sustainable development in harmony with nature without participation of women as equals with men. The speaker time is 4 minutes each person. You will see a hand go up and then you have 30 seconds. First, introduce yourself with your name, your place of living, and just one sentence about your professional background. Here are the 3 questions for today. What is your opinion, the role of women in making sustainable world in harmony with nature possible? What are the women's unique characteristics relevant to achieving sustainable development? What will it take to overcome the current obstacles that women face? And what role do you see for yourself and other women worldwide to change the status quo to participate as equals with men in governments, business, and civil society? The third and last question, what further actions do you envisage a decade or two ahead if women do not succeed in becoming equal partners in decision-making for a sustainable world? In order to, fundamental question we need to ask, not to empower, but how do we inspire women as action-oriented leaders for sustainability? It is time the dominating decision-making world of men in governments, business, and civil society awaken and realize that the failure to create a sustainable, humane world is simply a result of discriminating gender norms that continue to keep women out. Women are naturally endowed with characteristics to be empathetic, sensitive, mindful, caring, conscious, considerate. The list can go on. These are the qualities we need if we want to heal our divided human world and also to heal nature. Women, accounting for half the world's population, in most countries have yet to break free from the societal and religious conditions that keep them discriminated, suppressed, and excluded. For decades, the mantra has been, we must commit to women's empowerment and equality. Who is we? The we here are today's governments and businesses and civil society, who disproportionately comprise 85% of heads of state are men. 75% of members of parliament are men. 90% of business leaders are men. The highest priority is to dismantle the patriarchal, discriminatory gender norms and inequalities they sustain. These norms prevent women from claiming their rights, exposing them to harmful practices in the relationships as well as in the community. It is essential to change these stereotyped social norms and prejudices to be tomorrow's powerful and influential citizens for change as they represent half the world's population. Governments take note that women account for 50% of the voting public. Business take note that women their spend is over 70%. So they are important with their wallets as well. It is time for women themselves to mobilize their own self-awareness, self-education, self-development, and self-empowerment, as well as educating and inspiring their daughters and sons to be conscious, compassionate, committed, and action-oriented leaders. A pressing priority is for educational reforms, including initiatives such as leadership, advocacy, collaboration, integrity, authenticity, and resilience. These are essential to enable women and girls to develop their own voice and leadership, and thus fully participate in the pressing needs of realizing sustainable development. And that's an imperative ahead for us. I see 5 men and 5 women, and this is the voice of the women we want to hear. So I'm going to start by giving the floor to Jacqueline. Jacqueline, you have the first honor to open.
Well, thank you. So my name is Jacqueline Pirtle. I live in America, in Tampa, Florida, and I am a best-selling author, and I am a healing practitioner and a big voice for mindfulness and consciousness and energetic living. Most my clients and my work is actually attracted by women. You know, it's like I empower women. And originally I'm from Switzerland and lived all over the world. So my viewpoint is always very international, and I love that. And so what, in my opinion, is the role of, you know, women, and why it's so important for women to become a more on the power plateau of everything, is really because women bring a very specific energy to the table, and it's an energy of, you know, balance, harmony. You already mentioned that. And the intuition, it's like, it's, in one hand, it's not because men can't be that intuitive, it's or sensitive. They are too. It's just we've been taught, you know, back and back and back from generation to generation to kind of nurture that a little bit, and as a mom, as a woman, and taking care of everything. So the thing is, it's like, it's really important to bring that energy into the whole world, because to me, the new way of living, the future living, doing business is an energetic way. You know, it's like everything is energy, right? Yet we're looking for answers in the physicality mostly, especially men. That's just how they're trained, you know, looking for answers in physicality. But to me, the wisdom, since everything is energy, the biggest wisdom is actually in the energy. And that's really what women bring to the table. You know, it's like heart opened business doing, you know, heart open family raising and helping, you know, even it starts at home, right? Even like your boys, you know, raise them with an open heart, let them be, you know, and help them grow their intuition. And that is what women bring to the table. And it's not that men don't have it. I have a husband and I have a son, and they have it too, yet it's my husband's, for instance, it's not been nurtured, right? He's awakening, right? He's like, wow, this is amazing. And he's feeling well. How do you feel? Oh, you know, and it's these questions. And my son already grew up like that. So women bring a lot to the table moving on in the future, because to me, that is the way. That's why everything is crumbling, because there is just the energetic way is not there really much. So to me, that's really, and it's important. But when you look at nature, that's exactly harmony with nature, you know, it's harmony with nature, feelings, emotions, and really heart open way of doing business and doing life. So what will it take to overcome all this? To me, it's not really an overcoming, it's a shift. We're invited for a big shift, you know, and it's growing stronger and stronger. So the obstacle is really for us women, for myself, is to not fight the man. I don't have to become a man to count or to bring my power. It's I am staying true to me. I do not lose hope, and I just become stronger, because it's an inside job, you know. So I nurture my own inner alignment, and from there, with that power, I show up. Because to me, one woman being in alignment is 1,000 times stronger than 1,000,000 of men not being in alignment. So I'm not trying to change men. I'm not against men. I'm not even looking and paying attention to much what they're doing. Sure, not in denial. I'm very aware of it. But then I go inward and I collaborate with women, and I hold workshops for young women, you know, wishes and dreams, and how do you deal with being actually okay in the inside of you, but then going in the world and it's not okay. Teach them the inner power, how to align inside no matter what's going on out there. Because to me, that is the power. It doesn't matter I am me, I'm a lion, I'm a woman, I collaborate. I'm not taking other women down. We're pulling together, and we're becoming even strong. And that, I have a daughter too, that, you know, starts really also with moms, you know, like our daughter, she is a real powerful young woman. And I wanted that way. Be rebellious, fight for it, you know, and you can teach that even if young women grew up differently, you can still share that. And I just held a workshop like that. And it was amazing how they came in and how they left. It's just amazing. And they go home and they share that with their moms, they share that with their friends and whatnot. And to me, it's a collaboration and it's a sharing and spreading. So that's really, to me, there's no fight needing to happen, because when you fight, you put the momentum on what's wrong, that just gets stronger. And also you lose energy. You know, I don't want to lose my energy. I want to gain more and grow more. So I'm actually in sync with me inside, and I'm aware with what's going out there, knowing that I don't need to fight anything, that I just need to be me and spread that and support every woman on the street. Every day when I see women, grocery store, on the street, everywhere, tell them how beautiful they are, tell them how powerful they are, tell them how amazing their work is and who they are. What do you see in them as a woman? Because I tell you what, you tell that to one woman that's walking down the street, maybe having a hard time with their children or anything really, and you tell that woman, wow, you're so amazing what you do. Do you know that and whatnot? You change their life, you know, and their lives out there, and then they go and change their children's lives. And I think that's what it's really needed for the future. Well, you know, I'm very hopeful and knowing that if we live like that as women, and if we empower other women and also other men, you know, to be sensitive. Wow, you're sensitive. That is exactly what's needed. Well done, and support them and help these men, because most men, or a lot of men that I know, they want to be like that. They want to learn from us, right? Be their teacher without beating them down or thinking, oh, it's just a man. No, they're amazing men. They're needed. Everyone and everything is needed. And then help them. And that, in my eyes, is the future, really, to do that. And I'd rather not look at if it doesn't happen. I'd rather just focus on that it's going to happen. It is happening. The shift is happening. Let's all latch on and go with it, because it feels amazing to live like that. To me, that is the future. And that's what I'm teaching to my clients in my workshops, especially young women and young people too, you know. And I'm also going into corporate businesses and teaching that to the executives, to the managers, because to me, that's where it is. Open their hearts, teach them the energetic way, because that's a high for life frequency, and that's where really everything sits.
No, Jacqueline, thank you very much. You use refreshing words like energy, intuition, heart open, which never is heard in any men's seminars, heart open. However, you also said that men also have intuition, but women have more of so. So let us not fall in this trap that men have feminine energy and masculine just as women do. But the proportions are different. Fundamentally, let's remember that there would be no man without women in this world. If you look at the COVID, 5 or 6 women handled in every one of their countries as political leaders much better than men. And I think we need to awaken to that fact. So thank you, Jacqueline. And we will come back to your passionate, and we need many more of you, because there are very few of you in this world. And we need to recognize that there aren't enough women driving this. You have a daughter that's very powerful, but this is lacking, and much more needs to be done. Nicole, I'm going to give you the floor. Enjoy your drink first. Nicole, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So I'm the Nicole, yeah, that is called. Okay, so a warm hello to everyone. My name is Nicole, living in Berlin. And I'm a serial entrepreneur and curator with a great passion of building meaningful and regenerative futures. Regarding the role of women in making a sustainable world, I would go with the term of ecofeminism, as it sees the environmental protection and the relationship between women and the earth as a basis for sustainable research and practice. Maybe you know the term was influenced by a French writer, Françoise de Bonne, and she sees, or she calls, let's say, she calls for egalitarian collaborative societies in which there is no dominant group anymore. And I think as I was grown up in the GDR, a socialist country, so in East Berlin, it was quite, how can I say, challenging for me to have this difference between men and women, because I was grown up in an equal, more kind of equal society where women had the same rights as men and also earned the same money as men. And then, you know, a new system came over me and I had the feeling of going back kind of, and had to fight for something that was right, was my right beforehand. So I have mixed feelings about the future, because I think many communities still have this kind of equal distribution of power. Of course, the majority doesn't have that, and it's still very harmful and very sad to see that women can't raise their voices in certain cultures and certain business hierarchies. For me, as a human being on this planet, I always go with this kind of vision that it would be wonderful to live in coexistence, not only with other men or women, but also with other species. I don't know whether this is a kind of female perspective, but I think that we have to overcome our old beliefs, let's say, and also allow women and female leaders to be a part of the of business, of art and science in a much broader way, because it's really about finding solutions toward anthropocenic issues, and there we need every voice. And I think that's the most important thing for me. It's really about empowering young people and also listening to each other, be it with people with different backgrounds and coming from different disciplines, also have intergenerational discourses and debates. It's really the exchange that is needed so much for facing the challenges of the 21st century. And also, for me, it's really this kind of collaborative society that I'm envisioning. And again, it's really about listening to each other. I love your approach to this energy concept, Jacqueline. So it's, I also say always, I go with the flow and not with the money flow. I go with my flow as a human spirit. And I would love that in the future, we also accept and respect our multidimensional personality, so that we connect, whether in a verbal or non-verbal way, and that it's not only about power structures. We always think this is the most important thing on earth, but actually for me, it's not. It's just one way of thinking and being in this world, but there are so many other dimensions I also love to explore. And I don't know what I would have done, you know, as a being in a male body. But I think I can relate, of course, or I wish to relate to as many human beings on this planet and species on this planet. And for me, we really have to overcome this egocentric, but also maybe also this male-centric perspective, and really become eco-centric or biophile, maybe is also another term. And therefore, I do all kinds of activities, be it, for instance, that I founded the Art for Futures Lab at the Film University in 2020, when the pandemic hit, because the young generation really has a negative outlook of the future. And by accepting also what has been developed in the past, what great solutions are already out there, and what kind of manifestations we did already in the last decades, I think this is also what drives me even further to envision positive futures and really use our imagination as creative people. And I think everyone has this creativity lying within them, and use this creativity to overcome our power structures, and also to envision what we really wish for and what we really, or how do we want to live in the future in the best way, and then from this point we go backwards and understand what we have to do better, what we should learn, how we develop technologies and businesses, and so on and so forth. So my wish for humanity is that we really bring every voice to the table, be it youngsters or, of course, women. So everyone should be on the table and has a voice to raise how they wish for the future in the best way.
Thank you, Nicole. You made 2 points. One was DDR, equality of pay. I think we need to also admit promotions to the power positions are lacking as much in the DDR and similar countries as elsewhere in the world. And that is what we need to promote, women to the leadership. And also towards later on I would like you to define eco-feminism, because these kind of terms are sometimes counterproductive, but let us come back to that. Can I now call upon Indira Chatterjee, who is in Australia, and it must be later than Bali. So Indira, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's both a privilege and honor to be here in this panel tonight. Thank you for having me. Well, it is 11 o'clock. So yes, well, we are talking about voice of women, and I'm an advocate of domestic violence against women with or without disabilities, and decriminalized sex work, and women in prison. So when we talk about women's voice, I mean, it's an unfinished business of our time. And when I say that, the core issue is gender inequality. And we continue to work on improving women's economy opportunities, which still lags woefully behind men's in every part of the world. So when I say, how can we achieve gender equality? And when I say gender, the word includes men, women, LGBTIQA+, non-binary, and other gendered people. Let's not forget that when we say just voices for women, other people are excluded. No, they are all included in this. So gender roles are influenced by social beliefs and generalization that have been in use for centuries. So that's something needs to be break down into the reality, how modern society thinks about it. So one way to solve this problem in society is the media to show more relatable and positive portrayals of people, such as a transgender or a transsexual teenager who is going to school like any other teenager, or a football player who dresses or behaves in a feminine way. There's nothing wrong in it. Another solution would be more comprehensive lessons in schools that show the differences between sex and gender. There is a vast misconception between these two words. People often consider that sex and gender are both the same. Now, they are far two different poles apart. So that's something needs to be educated, as well as the different feelings kids and teenagers may experience as they begin to go through puberty. And the third one is we have several men programs coming up. I mean, across the world, we have several men helpline coming up to stop against violence. The main thing is to unlearn the gendered privilege, which has been going on for centuries and centuries. It's time to unlearn the gendered privilege. And the fourth one, the program and the services that focus on education meant to stop violence should challenge both normative and structural inequality. And why I say this, because women and girls represent half of the world's population and therefore half of its potential. I don't know how many of you agree with me on that, but I believe so. So gender equality, besides being a fundamental human right, is essential to achieve peaceful societies with full human potential and sustainable development. And one last thing is that, unfortunately, there's still a long way to go to achieve full equality of rights and opportunities between men and women. Therefore, it's a paramount importance to end the multiple form of gender violence and secure equal access to quality education and health, economic resources, and participation in political life for both women and girls and men and boys. It is also essential to achieve equal opportunities and access to employment and to position of leaderships and decision-making at all levels. That something needs to be done. And to achieve that, deep legal and legislative changes are needed to ensure women's rights around the world. And I'm doing this bit through my advocacies. So that's what my take on for voice movement.
Gender privilege is what keeps 80% of this world suppressed, and those are women. And I think it's important that necessities of appreciating men and so on, it's understood. Every man has a mother, has a wife, has a daughter, and yet the man in the office discriminates against the women in the office. And we need to admit this because we need change, and we cannot wait for change for 30 years. Because women are necessary to heal the world. Thank you very much, but we'll come back to that point. Malu, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mohendra. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I am Malu Fernandes. I'm a journalist and I live in Brazil. I'm PR, investor in startups, and have the purpose of participating in transformative projects. The words for me are action and participation. I don't like only to be in talks. I think it's possible, but if we do. I have never been activist for women as a cause because in a way or another, I managed to develop what I wanted. As I had a brother and cousins, and I was the only woman in the team. So I did it one way or another. But in 2016, I worked with a Brazilian politician, professor, academic, sociologist called Aspásia Camargo, born in 1946 in a Rio de Janeiro suburb. In the 60s, she studied at Sorbonne University in France. Imagine if it's difficult today for a non-rich Latin, imagine in the 60s. 2 years later, in 2018, the most influential Brazilian woman, according to Forbes magazine, her name is Luisa Trajano, launched the Brazilian Women's Group in Rio de Janeiro. So I joined it as soon as in the first day and started leading the communications area in this group. We are now more than 100,000 women in the world. We are the largest women's group in the world. If we look to your countries, you'll find us, one of us. And what we say is that we are not against men, but we empower women. We just defend women. We just fight for us. We are non-partisan, and we work for women's economic empowerment because, as Aspasia told me 6 years ago, we earn less. We have violence against women and girls, and education is one very important topic. And I found this in this group. So now, for example, we have elections coming, and we are working on awareness about governance, participation in public life, dialogue. So I think we should do by dialogue, talk, education. These are the words. We'll overcome the current obstacles that women face doing that, dialoguing. For example, this week I went to a favela, a poor area, and we are trying to take this talk to them, so that we can together come to the decision that we want for our governments, for our civil society, for engaging. I think we'll not learn how to surf by watching WSL on TV, the World Championship that was held in the city where I am now, in Saquarema. I really trust in their entrepreneurship as a path to financial independence of women. There's a guy who I met last year called Janguier Diniz. He says he was a Brazilian, was born in a shoe shine boy, like very poor. And now he's on the country's Forbes list. He says, it's not our fault to be born poor, but we are blamed to be dying poor, like we don't need to make money. But it sounds funny the way he talks, but it's just to show that we can create our paths and not wait for our salaries to increase, and be fighting for that. We can make our own movement. And he has found a movement called Obstinados, and I'm part of it, Obstinate Movement. And I try to prioritize women to join. It's about economic empowerment, so that we don't have to have men hitting us. For example, in Brazil, regarding the participation in public life, we have a total of 77 million women eligible to vote, representing 52% of the Brazilian electorate. But we only occupy 16% in the city councils and 12% in the city halls. One of the jobs I do, I like very much to act. I'm not very much into talks. I'm action person. His name is Alexandre Arraes. He's a secretary of the municipality, and he represents the Work and Wealth Secretary, right? He is the Secretary of Work and Health. And he says the change will happen in the cities. It's not in the states, it's not in the countries, it's not in anywhere else, above, in the moon, it's in the cities. So we have to work in our own cities. So one of the hacks we have in this group of women is regarding the violence. Every minute in Brazil, 8 women suffer some type of violence. 56,000 were victims of rape last year, and this number has increased 4.2%. 75% are vulnerable. What is? They are 13 years old, So we are looking for these girls. We have one of our leaders that she's a girl. She started with us. We were spreading pets. I never thought I'm a woman of 57 years old. I never thought that pets wouldn't come to certain places. Now we have a film about that. Very interesting film in India. So the numbers of feminicide have increased. Well, I have a lot to talk. If you want to talk, Mr. Mahendra, I am Malu Fernandez in LinkedIn. I think we have we must have purposes to wake up daily and coordinate nature. I am a Brazilian member of the Sustainable Network of Journalists. So I think everything dialogues, you know, as Ahai says, this guy who I work for in the municipality, everything interacts, you know, the generality, you know, young and old working together, the women and men and all the LGBT and all the, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malu Fernandez. A journalist talks about transformational projects, action projects. And it's an honor, and we need your voice, especially as a Brazilian, because we are celebrating Rio Plus 30. And we want to revive Rio Plus 30 into the next 30 years, because that's the best program we have, and there will not be another World Summit. So we welcome you, and we hope we can have this cooperation and your contribution to Rio Plus 30 and the next 30 years. Thank you. Thank you, Malu.
Thank you.
I now call upon Donna Nelham.
Hello there. It's morning here. My name is Donna Nelham. I am in Ontario, Canada. Although really I'm what my perspectives are very much are local and global. I am a co-founder of Institution, and my another co-founder here with me today. That's Steve Cook. Hi, Steve. And I'm going to speak probably from that context. I've got, you know, like many of you, many years, over 30 years working inside the various sectors, business, government, and civil society. And at some level, and I often do say this, I have felt for much of my life that I didn't belong in this world. Been trying for a very long time to do some things to bring about, to support the kinds of systemic change that I think we all care about and want to see. And I think it's perhaps we're coming closer to that time in our society where everything is broken. And so I'm going to speak more probably from a kind of a systemic perspective. At Institution, we are working in that space between to bring business, government, and civil society together. In essence, we're working across all the divides. And I think one of the first things I want to say is that's evident to me is that no one of us here has the answers. There are many answers, and we need to make the space for a very you know, rich and overlapping and multimodal ways of addressing the kinds of issues that we're talking about here. And some of these are going to be macro, and some of them are going to be more micro, local, on the ground, in community with the people in our lives. Some of these are going to be in that kind of in-between space. And so the thing that really strikes me, couple things, I mean, I do resonate very much with what's been discussed around learning and unlearning, education, energy, all of these things that have been expressed, and recognizing that we are in a place of real an unbalance in our world, and we're all looking and seeking, I think, for ways to bring about more balance. And this is in essence bringing both the feminine and the masculine in everything that we do that's very much out of balance, and to be paying attention to all of that in everything that we do in the way that we show up in the world. In our work at Institution, we're building coalitions, bringing people together of great diversity anywhere in the world, any role. And I think part of this is also a rethink of the paradigm of how we look at leadership. We can all lead, we can all follow. And we've all grown up in a world that has been dominated by a kind of industrial age that has perhaps modeled what we often describe as a masculine or dominant male model. We tend to tar it with that brush, but in many ways, perhaps what it is most reflecting is a reductionist, extractive, linear way of looking at things, and a way that basically predominates a very binary way of looking at things, where if you're not the brilliant one in charge, if you're not the one with the brilliant ideas, if you're not forcing things, then you're not making a difference or bringing about change. And that is in many ways, I think, a misguided way that many of us have been brought up in during these times. So particularly interested in some learnings that I think that are coming out of even brain research, the work of, say, Ian McGilchrist, which has recognized that the left hemisphere of the brain, which is all about that linear way of looking at things, has very much predominated in our society. That's what's been rewarded. Those are the messages that people have gotten, including women in many instances. I mean, there's many women in our world that feel that the only way they can succeed is by winning in that same way of taking on what has been a traditional male way of leading and dominating. And that's really doing a disservice to all of us. And at some level, I think where I'm coming from is we need, I think, to learn how to be fully human, which is bringing both sides of our capacity, right and left brain. The right brain is more that intuitive, creative, feeling, sensing, artistic, honoring all the difference in the cultural aspects, perhaps the caring side, the side that is where we're okay being a little more humble and being able to say, I don't know. Because the very issues that we're raising here, we don't have all the definitive answers. We need to come together and to figure out what's making sense in any given situation, considering what's going on, the socioeconomic issues, the bioregional issues, with nature, what's going on in terms of the environment. And there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom already out there, indigenous cultures that have wisdom traditions that go back many, many years. There's also a lot of learning that we can draw from people like Rianne Eisler, who for many years has talked about partnership type societies that honor all of this, bringing all of these things together. So to say that none of this has ever been is not the case. I know the hands up. The last thing I'm going to say here is I don't like the last question. What are we going to do if we do not succeed? I think we need to think in terms of a win-win-win for all of us. It's not in the sense of who's going to win over. That's the paradigm we need to figure out and change. And I'll stop there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me say that somebody from Canada, from Ontario, coming after Malu from Brazil. I have many memories of Ontario sitting just outside in a villa that belonged to Maurice Strong. And Maurice Strong is the man who created Stockholm, and he created Rio 92. So it's a pleasure, and you made one very important point, which is systemic focus. We are not using systemic approach, systemic thinking, systemic approach, and systemic actions, and that's why MDGs didn't work, SDGs will not work, and Climate 2030 will not work. At the same time, you said that there are many answers. If you have a systemic approach, you come up with the few answers that you implement. So the many answers need the few to be found. But thank you so much. Can I now, with the permission of the ladies, call on Steve Cook. Steve, you have the floor.
Goodness me, that's a tough gig, being the first man to follow the women, he said in a competitive way, which is a massive part of the problem. My name is Steve. I am in Oxford in the United Kingdom, which isn't great at the moment. I'm also with Don and Ellen, co-founder of Institution. I'm also a middle-aged, straight, white man. which makes me a social pariah. I'm also in the heartland of an age group that has 72% suicide rates. And I think a lot of that is because we have been conditioned to lead, to hunt, to fight, to look after our women folk, to be the predominant people in education so that we are learned, so that we can lead and govern. Everything I've just said is completely fucked, and it doesn't relate to the other part of me that I just want to share with you. I am a father to 5 children, 3 of whom are girls, 2 of whom are my daughters with my first wife, who I lost because she was killed when she was 30. So I brought up my 2 eldest daughters on my own. My youngest daughter is 17, and I've just become, in the last 12 months, a grandfather, and I have a 1-year-old granddaughter. So for me to say anything that is pro-male in my family is somewhat tricky. I will get attacked by all the women folk. So I just want to move on, having given you a bit of a background. I can only stand in the shadows of everybody that's spoken so far, and I just want to pick up on a couple of things. I've been making furious notes. Nicole talked about, and I fundamentally believe this, the different aspects of humanity. I actually find the binary nature of the conversation about men versus women difficult. I would like to think that my feminine side is as equal as my masculine side. I would hope, but I don't think that's true of most men. And it certainly isn't true of most men in many parts of the world. So the different aspects of humanity are the things that we should be concentrating our minds on, in combination with something else that Nicole said, which again Donna has referenced too. 3 fundamental drivers for the future: coexistence, collaboration, creativity. None of those things can happen in any way without cultural, structural, and systemic change. And most important of all, the point that Melu made just now around dialogue. You can't have dialogue unless the people in that dialogue feel equal, feel heard, feel that their own individual characteristics are being honoured and recognised, and that they are able to speak, to think, to learn, to listen with equality. And those are the fundamentals that we need to change. And we're not going to coexist as long as we have binary conversations about whether men are better than women or vice versa. I was on a train coming out of London. I was sat in the centre of London last weekend with 200,000 people at London's Pride events, and I came out of London on the train, and I was sitting opposite on the train someone called Germaine Greer. Germaine Greer, some of you may remember from the early 1970s and onwards, one of those sort of arch feminists. I went to see her do a talk about 25 years ago, and her hatred of men was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So what do we need to do? We need to culturally shift, arts, culture, incredible feminine capabilities in arts and culture. Everything that has been spoken about by Mahendra at the beginning around intuition, mindfulness, everything to do with nature and living systems. I've watched 5 children being born. Those women were all born by women. So, you know, undeniably, nature, living systems, growing babies is unarguable as a truth about empathy with nature that women have that men sadly don't. I had no idea what I was getting into as a father for 9 months while my wife was pregnant. It only became clear to me what being a parent was about after my baby was born. Up until that point, I had no idea. So I think the role of women is going to be determined not by women, but by the younger generation. The younger I watch just in the UK, and I know we don't have many of the challenges that women face in other parts of the world here, but I've watched the empowerment of women being born out of young women. I look at my 17-year-old daughter, I look at the roles, and my other two daughters, and I look at the roles they have adopted, the attitudes that they have. They will not accept playing second fiddle to men. They won't. They will change it from within. And on that note, I'll stop.
Shift, arts and culture. Women are the ones who have been carrying forward the cultures and traditions. What we need today in sustainable development is to provide food to the people who are dying. This morning, I was looking forward to this webinar, and I listened to the results of the Security Council, where Russia vetoed to deliver food to 3 million people who are at total risk of dying. Then the United States, France, and UK also vetoed. So we have a stalemate that there is nothing moving to feed these people. And that's the world we live in. So yes, culture shift, arts and culture, but let's take the reality of the challenges we are facing. And there are 5 men leaders forever. Since 1945 in the Security Council, there has never been a woman there.
And look at who leads community groups worldwide, Mahendra. It's mostly women. Most of the work that we see on the ground in different parts of the world every day are led by women. So
I know, but global decisions are made in the security. Do you understand the plight of 3 million that will die because the Turks have crossed the road? What I'm saying is we need women in the top position, just like it happened with Angela Merkel, with Arden, etc., that they took the initiative. Anyway, it is now also a pleasure that there are 3 Brazilians. I just noticed that there are 3 Brazilians here. And again, 30%, and we are here for Rio plus 30. Vera, you have the floor.
Hi. Well, good morning, everybody from Brazil. Thank you again, Dr. Mahendra. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Vera Regina Pejete Sanada. I'm a partner and producer at Aventuras Produções. As a wife, businesswoman, and artisan, I do something in pottery. I see women becoming stronger year after year. I don't like to say that we are gaining space. I prefer to say that we are growing every year. The main profession for women until the 80s, we are usually teachers, housewives, seamstresses, secretaries, most working for men. Now, as we women have the ability to do more than one thing at the same time and with perfection, we have been putting into practice our professional wisdom, not only as education, but as leaders, including in some nations, like you said, or we start with Margaret Thatcher in England. And we can see that even in film productions, because we work for a production things. For example, where today women are as the leaders, including from heroines to villains. And I like to compare people with animals, like women are strong like lions, protective like orangutans or octopuses or ducks, fly high eagles, are smart like dolphins and sensitive like cats, and have many arms like octopuses. I love octopus. I have in my back one octopus because we have many arms. And that's why more and more women are admired, not only for their beauty and sensitivity, because we are more beauty than a man. But for their professionalism, we need more women in decision-making position to ensure the future of the world will be more sustainable.
Thank you so much, Vera. I don't know if all the other people here, because I happen to know Vera and her husband, and you cannot find two, a woman and a man, totally in harmony in everything they do. They sailed on a Phoenician ship that they built, and Vera was on the floor building that ship. He was pulling the ship, the waves, and always she's there. So Yuri, beyond being a co-host, I want you to speak as a Brazilian man, please.
Good morning from Brazil, for us like 11 a.m. Yeah, like Malu said, Vera, we're from a big country and it's very violent. I'm afraid to say Brazil, it's lots of violence against the woman. So for Brazil, this change that it's sometimes like Europe, some countries in Europe is more like ideological and of course important, but for Brazil it's like a survival thing. So we really have to have some change here and empower the woman. So it's great to be able to be here and participate in the webinar and hear all this opinion. And of course, they're going to make into the documentary we're preparing to show to Brazilians and the rest of the world this year. So thank you everybody for participating.
Thank you very much. Steve, you have the floor.
I'm Steve Salmoni. I'm a psychologist. I'm in North Carolina in the United States. I'm a grandfather, and I'm worried about the state of the world. And it's so refreshing to be here with you all, and especially to hear from the ladies in this group. It's just means a lot to me, because I am a product of a predominantly patriarchal society, a hugely dominant patriarchal culture. It's been that way for a very long time. Much of our history is marked by patriarchy. And look at where we are today. Things worldwide are in decline. I attribute a lot of that decline to patriarchy. Now, there have been two action words that I think really deserve some consideration. One of them is the word shift. The other is the word balance. We are dangerously unbalanced as a human world. The biophysical reality of the earth that we are blessed to inhabit is self-sustaining, self-organizing. It's worked for a very long time. And humans and our patriarchal orientation have become such a force of nature that we are actually destabilizing the physical world upon which we are utterly dependent for our existence. Now, this amount of unbalance requires what was referred to as some kind of massive shift. A part of this has to come, as Mahendra suggested in his opening remarks, patriarchy has to be dismantled. Now, I like the idea of equality. and I like the idea of the empowerment of women. And yes, Steve, I also have a daughter, granddaughter, and believe in their empowerment. But I think really more than that is required in the desperate situation with which we're confronted. So it leads me to say something radical. And please forgive me for saying it if anybody objects, but I think we need a, not just the equality of women, I think we need a matriarchal society that is dominated for a while by females. I am not so sure that given what I've seen patriarchy accomplish in this world and the state of the world, as I see things in 2022, I don't think it's just sufficient to say, oh, well, we're going to give women equal rights and equal pay and all that they should have gotten long ago. I think there needs to be, among other things, there needs to be more than one shift. There needs to be a shift from patriarchy to matriarchy. There needs to be a shift from ruthless competition to cooperation and collaboration among human beings. We desperately need to work together. We are so unbalanced that the challenges I see before us are absolutely daunting. Now, I'm not going to go on about any of this anymore about this at the moment, but I am resolute in my belief that if some major changes are not made in the way we conduct human affairs on this earth, our children are going to have challenges to face, the likes of which none of us here can even imagine. And I don't like what I can't even imagine for them. Thank you all.
The limited time we have, lifespan of the youth alive today, we're looking at 50, 60 years lifespan. And that's the only window left for us to make the transition to a sustainable and a humane world. And that has never in history, we have put responsibility on one generation to make the change. It's never happened before. I was a little concerned when you said we are going to give equal rights to women. I keep saying, who are we? What authority we men have this? And we keep repeating that when we know that 90% of businesses are CEO, 85% of government leaders are men. And we think we are endowed to lecture to women that we are going to give you equal rights. No. Equal rights have to be demanded and self-demanded by women because they have much more to contribute to healing this world of humans and to heal the world of nature both. Now, from Europe, we had only one speaker, Nicole. Nicole, I presume you're based in Berlin. Jörg, we need the European statement on behalf of total gender. So Jörg, you have the floor. You're not a host anymore. In this moment, we want the truth.
The truth is always hovering around. Well, I'm Jörg from Hamburg in Germany. I'm a filmmaker by profession and a social entrepreneur as well. I founded some years ago, together with my colleague from Australia, Liz, an organization that is called Youth for Planet, and it's about empowerment and, of course, of equal rights for everybody. And I'm concerned, of course, that I speak from the position of being now the unique male, white male, sort of privileged person, Caucasian type, which is dominating still the planet in many organizations and many places around, international leadership positions. And just by being aware, I know that this will not sustain. It will only sustain by applying some kind of force. Because at the moment I see, especially in the last few years, this cultural shift of female attributes are becoming the dominant factor in making change happen. So it's something that is somehow attributed to women because men are not being trained to do that. That is dialogue, it's listening, it's asking questions, it's sort of looking around who else is needs something. And this is something that I think is to be trained in all social situations. It needs to be trained in school, in working together, in the workplace, everywhere. It should be trained that people are working together on eye level and in the same direction. And when you think about this question of mindfulness and paying attention to things and to people and to living other things, Nicole mentioned that it's not just humans we should listen to, then you suddenly see that the world is much larger, and you need to learn more about the much bigger and greater and larger world, actually. And my concern is that we need to develop these abilities to create dialogue, to create cooperation, to create listening to each other on the spot, while the machine is running, while the destruction is happening. Still, we need to develop further this way of listening and coming together and cooperating, co-creating, and so forth. So when Mahendra, when you were asking for systemic change, I think systemic change is in the social field. It needs to happen in education, in learning, in the way we see the world, explore the world, and how we actually move around in the world. And of course, equality has to be there. And I'm very aware that, again, as a male person, I can move around in the city. Hamburg is not a good example, but in other places it's more difficult for women to move around without being somehow being made aware that they are women and that they are subjected to some kind of attention, some kind of attribution, some kind of now control how they move, how they act in public. And I think this has to change by creating an open space, by creating a public space where everybody can actually move like he or she is pleased to move. And I would say how to achieve that is by giving people a space where they can perform publicly. So this should be incorporated into schools and into any kind of training that everybody is asked to go on stage and perform and be herself, himself in public. This is something very important, because when you feel this empowerment of other people's attention, of listening and having to say something yourself, then you interact and you become a real person ready for dialogue. And I think that's the way we work in our organization with Youth for Planet methods, where we help people to make films in order to learn, see, get inspiration, get a feeling for something, and then express and have impact. So there's a chain that helps to make these things happen. And I'm a big friend of changing parts of a chain in order to take a different route. And I think we are on the verge of doing that. And all of you here are change makers in that respect, that you're standing in a certain position and say, okay, why don't we take this direction now? And this inspiration is really key to making this change happen. And thank you.
Thank you, Jörg. Truth is not hovering. Truth is actually bitter. And the truth is women have been excluded for far too long, and you do not have time going forward. We don't have 50, 70 years ahead. We need to take action now to bring women to the tables of decision making. And on your point about systemic action, I think it was Nicole who mentioned it. I have spent my whole lifetime studying with my studies, systems thinking, followed by systems analysis, and that gives you the systemic actions. So it is not something that's in the arts. Systemic actions are necessary, but you cannot get to systemic actions without systems thinking, systems analysis, systems modeling, and then look at the scenarios and you make the choice based on that. And I've spent 50 years doing that. I think it is now time to open up the discussion. And who mentioned feminism? I had my notes.
Donna already is asking for.
I know. But, yes, I know. But I want to ask the question, eco-feminism. We need a little bit more sentence on that. Who mentioned eco-feminism?
It was Nicole. And you, but
I think I mentioned that this French writer who came up with this term in the 70s, that she envisioned an egalitarian and collaborative society. And I think for me, this concept is still, and I think also after all the speeches here, it's obvious that we really need an equal participation of all social groups in the dialogue. And this was what she envisioned. And that it was also important for her that women are also often excluded from the research when it comes to sustainable transformation, be it as the observers or the researchers or the people that are researched. And for me, another point I was trying to bring in, but then I lost a bit the focus, is also, for instance, I really appreciate our EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, she is really a female leader. And she brought this concept of the new Bauhaus, new European Bauhaus in, which is also a cultural project for sustainable futures, because this is what we also see from research, that even we know where we should bring a kind of new systems change, let's say, it's also about culture, so that we can overcome our beliefs and our old behaviors. Even we know that we could do better, or what we could do better. And then when it comes, for instance, to techno transformation, then it's also about what I mentioned shortly, that we allow ourselves to develop technologies that bring bias in, that are discriminating, that and it's not the other way around, that we envision positive futures first, yeah, and then from there go backwards and see what we could actually do to bring these futures alive. To go back to this new European Bauhaus, I think it's a wonderful concept. But when you look into the EU budgets, and it's the EU, you know, then whether it was it's the Green Deal, or it's the, you know, after the pandemic, the new generation budget, or whatsoever, the next, then it's only 10% that actually go into jobs for women, because it's still about the value in return. And here we really have to overcome our beliefs as well, you know, in a capitalistic culture in a way. And therefore, I think it was Steve that mentioned it, that women are more in grassroots movements participating. I think many women have already recognized that the systems that were established are not suiting us anymore. So we really have to build new structures, new infrastructures, new financial systems. And I think this is what we are aiming more in the cultural sector, that first we have to understand each other, what we really wish for, how we envision our societies in the futures, and then come more into you know, certain disciplines and certain fields to see what we actually can rebuild, yeah, or newly build.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Can you please make your statements a little bit short, because we have 15 more minutes. And I'm going to give the floor to Malu, and then Donna after Malu. Malu, you have the floor.
The floor to say about feminism?
No, you at the end of it, you said you had more to say, and I had to stop you. I apologize. So please, now you have the floor.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Shah. It's a pleasure to be with Jacqueline, Nicole, you, Yuri, Vera, Indira, and everybody. I think documentaries like this will make us improve, because the society, because we can share with everybody. And so if we can have subtitles that everybody understands what we are talking about, the more we communicate, the more we make our visions touch everybody's heart. As we say in the Grupo Mulheres do Brasil, which is the group of women I said, we must invite the men to come together. Like when we have manifestations, protests, you know, when we go to the street, we invite men to come, because they hit the women, not the women hit the women. So we must come together. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Donna, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think what I want to raise here is a recognition some things we've already been saying of how we've been brought up in this society and how easy it is to slip into inadvertently binary thinking, which is a blind spot. We don't even recognize it when we're doing it. And that's not a criticism. It's just a recognition of just how pervasive that is. And there's such a huge learning for all of us to embrace and. It's not one or the other. It's not systemic thinking or arts and culture. It's how do we bring these things together and weave them together as part of a holistic way of looking at all of this. Learning from the patterns of nature, which has lots of wisdom. Nature knows how to do this. Indigenous wisdom knows how to do this. It's not either or. And as long as we keep shifting and looking at things in terms of like pendulum swing, it's this or it's this, I think we stay stuck with the best of intentions. So that's why I raised the question in the chat, Steve Salami, and I really resonate with most everything you said there, Steve. But I was wrestling, it was more of a question, living the question. If we try to embrace and speak to, well, now we need to shift to matriarchy. What do we set up for ourselves inadvertently by advocating that? Because it tends to perhaps perpetuate that it has to be the one or the other. So how do we learn to embrace the masculine and the feminine in all of us? And recognizing we're all going to be different. It's on a continuum, so we're never going to get it in perfect balance. And at the end of the day, we are messy humans, all of us. We try. Our life is an ongoing work in progress as we develop to become more fully human. Not an easy road, but that's part of the journey, lifelong learning, lots of different ways for us to learn. So how do we figure out how to do that? Recognizing we all fuck up. None of us is perfect. And even those of us that perhaps have done a lot of work on ourselves personally around getting more balance, we still do things at times that are incongruent, where the walk and the talk don't match up. And that's part of being messy humans. Incongruent. And so we want to work at becoming more congruent, for sure. And it's very easy to be critical of one another and to then other people and say, well, I've got my shit together and I've got the answers, but it's all of you that need to make the change. So how do we figure out to recognize this is part of the existential human condition? And we learn on the ground in real life experience by working together in dialogue, as Malu has really, expressed very clearly, and all of us. It's by everything we do, every moment as we go forward. That's kind of where I've come down as I listen to all of this with great love and respect for all of the things that have been expressed with the best of care and intent. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to shortly close. I just want to mention that somebody, I think it was York, who mentioned white male privilege in this world. I haven't heard any speaker talk about the developing country developed divide. Now, the developed countries have everything going for them. Developing countries do not. We are in an interdependent world. You don't give vaccines to the 80% of the people, it's going to come to haunt you. And it's time to realize that viruses, climate change, pollution do not recognize political boundaries, neither geographical boundaries. And we didn't hear anybody make a case that this is a global issue which needs a partnership which is uneven because the developed countries developed and polluted the world. That was the spirit in Stockholm. Developed countries said, our problem is development. We are still 50 years later in the same position, that the priority is development, and nobody is coming forward with common but differential responsibility to make a partnership. However, who would want the last word now? Vera, you have the floor. Por favor.
She does.
Well, I just want to say it's very important. We, not only women, but all of us, to take care of the world and do something, because like everybody knows here, but many people need to understand, we need to take care of the world. That's it.
Thank you. Jacqueline, you have the second word. Jacqueline.
Well, thank you. Well, listening to everyone, it's very inspiring, everything. And to me, it's really clear. It's to go inward, you know, and realize that you actually have a heart, and to open it so wide. Because I tell you what, you look through the eyes of your mind and old beliefs and what's going on in the outer world, and you will react very restricted. But you open your heart and you look through the eyes of your open heart, you will love people, you will give people the rights, you know, you will support people, you will do good in the world. And it feels really good, because, you know, it feels good to be a good person and to be aligned with who you are. So open your heart, look through the eyes of your heart. And I really, truly believe that will change your actions, the way you show up. It would change your life, and it will change the world.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to comment on something in the chat that Steve raised the question that we need a new paradigm in government, business, and civil society leadership. In order to get a new paradigm, you have to understand the system. And to understand the system, yes, needs a systems thinking, systems perspective to understand the blockages, the pluses, the minuses, etc. So that is an important element in decision making. And you are so right that we are in binary nature. Our world has become binary nature because we are two groups in this world, 20% on one side and 80% on the other. However, Yuri, you from Brazil have the final word. I will not speak after that. Yuri, please.
Yeah, well, just to tell everybody, thank you very much. And I think it was very good to be able to meet with everybody today and engage in this important issue. And I make sure everybody looks nice in the documentary. That's it. Thank you very much for your participation.
Jörg, thank you for being part of this. Youth for Planet really has come to us, and I want to applaud your participation and dedication in our partnership. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you too. And I think it was a pleasure to have you all here on board, and very inspirational, all the diversity. And I think this is what we want to encapsulate, diversity in every, we are all Hollands, we are all one that carry the entire world in us. And I think to make this an experience is something that we should strive for all the time.
And thank you, the two Steves who are with us, because I was told this is a Voices of Women webinar, but the voices of women need men to be on their side, and we need that partnership. So although in well, we're not in minority, we are 5-5. So let's make this partnership going.
6-5, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Mr. Shah, Yuri and Veral has always talked about you to me, and I'm very glad I had this opportunity. And for the others, I have asked you to be my friends in LinkedIn. So if you can accept, I'll be very happy that we can work globally together for the world change.
Thank you. Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Namaste,
Have a nice weekend.
Dr. Mahendra.
Namaste.
Namaste.